Pandora's Box Chat Show. Today's topic is abusive relationship and why women stay in the relationship even though they're being abused. With me as always, Felicity Guest.
Hi, Leda.
A topic that is not easy to discuss, a topic that more than just South Africans, the globe over, women really need to look at and ask themselves, why in the 21st century are we as women that are liberated, we are modern, we are working, why do we still find ourselves in relationships where men are abusing us?
We might be in the 21st century, but what has changed about patriarchy? And I think that's what we really have to start. How far has patriarchy shifted? How much has patriarchy given away to liberating women? And I think that's why we're still sitting with this problem in the 21st century.
So the big question, everybody always asks, yeah, you know, the man abused her and beat her up, but you know what? She just goes back to him. So what's the point? Why do women go back?
I think that a lot of women stay or go back, one, because they're thinking of their children and they're putting their children first, because they either don't want to upset their children's routine, and also they want to try and still have their children live the same kind of lifestyle that they've been used to. And with those as your priorities, women end up sacrificing so much of themselves for their children's well-being.
But yes, we know that, you know, when you stay in it for the sake of the kids, very often the kids are actually not better off.
No, they're not. But I think at the time when we're thinking about that, we're just thinking of all the reasons why we shouldn't go and not why we should go. We know we should go, but then we start thinking about all the reasons why we shouldn't go. And some of those I think are, and for myself, you know, these are some of the things that I considered being in a relationship 10 years, longer than what I should have. And it's not just because we had grown apart, but you also kind of get used to the abuse and you figure out what you can still tolerate and what you can't. And so the things that we take into account are financial. We can't deny that that isn't a huge aspect of what keeps women in abusive relationships or them going back into abusive relationships, because often in marriages, a lot of women still don't work. They're not economically active. They're full-time mums. In the modern world that we live in, there's a lot of fathers that travel extensively. So it is a full-time role, you know, taking up both of those. And how can they leave? They have no income. So that is the biggest thing, because, I mean, without an income, you can't provide the basic necessities for yourself or your children. So financial is a big one. The other one very often is, over a period of time, the abuser sets it up and isolates you from your friends and from your families. So you might still see them occasionally, but they don't pick up signs that things are going wrong. And the victim, isn't always comfortable going, I'm being abused. So it's the isolation, it's the financial constraints. It's also, depending on your own upbringing and how long the subtle abuse happens, because you don't even realize you're being abused. And then one day, you reflect and go, oh my gosh, how did I get here? It was so subtle. And then you look at how that happened and you suddenly realize that you could possibly have married your dad. Yeah. Because those are your coping skills if you come from abusive relationships. And I think in the past there were a lot of abuse going on in relationships. The world was very different. There was no social media. It was a telephone in a house that was in a very public or a very busy family space. So where would you sit on your house telephone having a conversation about you being abused?
No, you weren't.
So, you know, there was a lot of secrecy around abuse, and I think, I don't think that it's increased that significantly. The awareness
is more.
And the reporting is more.
And what are the stats currently?
The stats worldwide, and we're pretty on par, maybe slightly higher than the world, is about 50% of relationships there is some form of abuse going on in them.
That's scary.
Yeah. So I mean, it depends, like abuse.
And are we talking all kinds of abuse? Physical, yes, emotional, financial, all of that?
Correct. when you just the general term abuse, yeah, at least 50% of relationships that will categorically where people are aware they're being abused.
And stay in it for various reasons,
and stay in
of
it
course.
for various reasons, or longer than what they should. You know, I think a lot of women do eventually make the choice to go, but there's no doubt that women stay in abusive relationships for much longer than what they should.
And so what is our Pandora story for today?
I think a lot of people will actually relate to Pandora's story. When Pandora met her first husband, she was very aware that he came from a family where there was a history of abuse. And prior to them getting married, he actually threatened once to kill them while they were driving in the motor car. But they decided to move away from where their family was, and she thought the abuse would probably not be as prevalent as it had been. That's what she was hoping for. She then fell pregnant with her first child, and after she gave birth, his jealousy crept in, and he started stalking her, and he started accusing her of having an extramarital relationship, which wasn't the case. I mean, she was looking after a brand new child. And shortly after that, she fell pregnant again. And part of his history was that he had a sexual deviant addiction, and that kicked in after the birth of the second child, and he started having numerous affairs. The physical and the emotional abuse just continued to escalate until one night he hit her so hard that she suffers from partial hearing in her one ear.
Yeah.
And then after that he raped her. She then, decided she actually couldn't continue, and she left the relationship.
With two small children.
With two small children.
Wow.
And I think that's a common story, maybe slightly different dynamics, but that's a common story for most Pandoras.
So a case like Pandora, do we see that in specific communities, or is it across the board?
I think that the way that it's handled is a little bit different, because if you take your higher income earners, it's generally less visible and less obvious and more of a secret, because they have more to lose in the sense of materialistic changes. I think that in the lower income groups and certain influences, like where there's a lot of abuse of alcohol, where that tends to happen in certain communities, it is definitely a lot higher in those communities, because there's a lot more openness and less shame about being an abuser.
With all the experience that you've encountered, why would women not speak up?
The shame, really. I think that's the biggest thing, the shame. And who do they speak out to? Because often if you go to your immediate family, you've kept an act. You've had a mask on. A lot of I know that my first husband, my mom actually said, like, I don't think you should marry him. I married him, so now that he's abusing me, to go back to the person that said don't do it because this is not a good marriage to go into. So there's a lot of, I think that those are a lot of things, and even like when you're in relationship and people go, what is going on there? So to now admit that yes, this is going on, and then to go into detail. Very seldom when you hear somebody's being abused, they don't go, I'm being abused, and then no more, because then it's like opening up. How is the abuse happening? How often is it? How is it impacting on you? So it's a very sensitive topic or gate to open, which exposes you, it makes you so vulnerable. Because now that you've spoken about it, do you need to act on it?
Yeah. Like you said, the shame, but it's not just that, it's what's going to happen if he finds out that I said something. So it's that fear combined with the shame, because women are always seen as, well, it's your fault, you shouldn't have dressed like that, or maybe you did something, or you said something, or maybe you are not doing what you're supposed to do as a woman, all these 110.
Well, you should have just kept quiet. You shouldn't have answered him back.
And it's sad that we still get women telling other women that, that kind of response. It's sad that we still get that kind of response from other women to women.
It is very sad, and I think, we just have got so much work to do in society that abuse is unacceptable. And people tend to only consider physical abuse, but it's those silent forms of abuse, like the emotional and the psychological abuse, because it's a lot more difficult if to hide a black eye or a broken arm, which are often common things that happen. But to be scarred emotionally and psychologically and bruised, and how do you, those aren't visible.
Yeah.
So those are the ones that are more difficult to explain and also more difficult to actually seek protection for or from. I firmly believe that the only way to stop abuse is to expose the abuse, because while you are kind of secret about it, the abuser still holds the power. But the moment you expose the abuser, you actually take his power away, you take his control away. But having said that, one has to kind of plot that and be mindful when, because you don't know what kind of retaliation there would be from it. But to certainly, because once they expose it, now they know, they can't. And then often another form of abuse will creep in. But if you just keep exposing it, they'll be very mindful about going and continue doing that.
So when a woman go out and report the case to the police, what is the process? How long does that take? And what kind of support system is there for her?
In terms of policy, SAPS takes it incredibly seriously. They have a victim charter policy which dictates how they are to handle a particularly domestic violence report or complaint from the time that the victim walks into the police station, breaking up the different kinds of abuse that they experience, how to process it from there, who to connect them with. And so if it's rape or sexual abuse, obviously then that has to go to a district surgeon to be able to confirm that. But if somebody comes in and they're completely hysterical, there is a victim charter to guide them how to cope, because the focus is actually on the victim. A lot of women don't report it because it becomes, you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that this occurred. And that's where the difficulty comes in.
Yeah, how do you prove it? Unless you have photos of physical abuse.
But even then, it gets dissected, and it can be so prolonged that the emotional trauma continues. So a lot of women have heard stories about how bad it is. They've possibly been through it themselves before. They've possibly had protection orders before, withdrawn them, now they're scared to go back. Or, they've just felt systematically abused and exposed in that process. And then often when they go to court, a lot of our courts are not sensitive to this, so you'll have the abuser and the victim in the same room, like waiting to go to trial. There's all these complexities. There are some incredible pockets where the victim is treated with absolute care and sensitivity and empathy, and it goes fantastically. But if you look at it over a whole, it often comes up, and that's the biggest resistance, because you just feel like you're being violated again, you're going systematically abused by the system.
Okay, so we are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to invite Gigi White, who is the founder of Get Up Women in Johannesburg, that helps women that has been through abusive situations. So please do stay with us. Welcome back to Pandora's Box, and this evening we're talking about abusive relationships and why women stay in it. All the way from Johannesburg, founder of Get Up Women non-profit organization is Gigi White. Gigi, a very warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for making time to speak to us this evening.
Thank you very much for having me on your show today.
Good evening, Gigi.
So tell us, what inspired you to start an organization such as Get Up Women?
One of the main reasons we decided to start Get Up Women 3 years ago was we just felt that there was, at that stage, a complete lack of support for women. We had a family molestation and literally knew nothing about it. We had no idea where to go. So the concept was just to get a couple of ladies to sit together and, maybe help each other out if you've been through something, if you've experienced something. So that was the initial start of Get Up Women 3 years ago.
Gigi, we've heard Pandora's story, and I'm sure that you will attest that this is a common story, maybe a few differences here or there. Why do you think that Pandora, although she was aware that there was a history of abuse and that she was abused after her first child, she then had a second child, and it was only when the injury was quite severe that she actually left the relationship? Why do women take so long to make the decision to leave an abusive relationship?
I think the best advice to give a woman that is now at a stage where she realizes she has to leave is you need a plan. Nobody makes a life-changing decision without a plan. You don't go on holiday without a plan. Everything needs a plan, and I find that when women just leave, they pack their little bag and they run, they ultimately end up having to go back because you can only live from shelter to shelter for so long. You can only live with family member to family member for so long. So we always just try and get the woman to kind of take a bit of time and, work out where are you going to go? Can your children go with? How much money is required? Do you need to start saving money before you leave? How much do you need to save? So I think that's quite vital, and it's unfortunately one of the parts women kind of leave out. They just run, and leads us to the next issue: why women keep going back. So yeah, I think just plan it properly, plan it down to the finest detail if you can.
Are there organizations out there that are supporting women in these circumstances?
Well, over the past 2 years, we've seen such a huge influx of women abuse. I'm not sure if it's increased as much as what the spotlight has increased on it. But yes, there are now actually a lot of organizations they're popping up all over the place that are assisting women. So yes, in terms of is there help out there? Are there organizations prepared to assist you? Yes, there are.
Gigi, you have spent a significant amount of time in court supporting victims. What is that experience like for victims?
Yes, court support is something we decided to bring into to Get Up Women about 2 years ago. We just realized that a lot of these women get alienated to the point that they have no one. They've lost family, they've lost friends, all due to the abuse for the most part. And I think if you've never been to court before, it can be quite a harrowing experience. It's very daunting, and just to have somebody with you, so when you're sitting there, you're not completely sitting alone. It seems to go a long way. The women for the most part are terrified. They don't know what to expect. They feel like they're the abuser. It's actually it's not a very nice place to be.
Are our courts sufficiently equipped to actually deal with most of the domestic violence and domestic abuse cases, women and children?
I think the courts are not the problem at this stage. The whole system is not the problem. What I've found, and it's really just my own personal opinion, I think the problem at the moment lies with the individual. You walk into the police station and we know what the laws are. We know what our rights are. But if that one individual behind the counter decides that, he's not in the mood or he doesn't agree with what you're complaining about, that's you. You go for a protection order and the clerk of the court's having a bad day, or, again, she's just heard too many cases and can't be bothered, that's you. So I think the bigger issue that we have is not the court, it's not the systems, it's not the legislations, it's not even whether or not the courts can assist us properly. It's what is the, who are the individuals accountable to? That social worker, that cop, that clerk, that magistrate, that ultimately gets to decide what happens to you. I find there's a far bigger issue there at the moment.
So the government take quite a strong stance against domestic violence. What are currently being done to assist women?
I think, in terms of the government, I think they are aware that there are issues. I just don't think they quite understand the severity of it. A lot of women will report their abuse to organizations such as myself, but it never really, not all of them really make it to, to authorities. So I don't think they're quite aware of how severe it actually is. I know there are a lot of programs that are currently being run, victim empowerment programs, but I don't know. In my opinion, I don't think you can ever do enough. But yeah, I think from a government point of view, I definitely feel they could be doing a lot more.
Gigi, it was the end of last year when they opened a new court in downtown Johannesburg, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure that this court is focusing on family matters, domestic violence. What is that court like in comparison to the other courts?
Yes, we actually aware of the new court out in the south. I myself have not, I haven't been there yet. We actually made the decision in January to kind of stop what we're doing, and we're now running upliftment courses for women. So just teaching women basic skills and showing them their own self-worth. So that has taken up a lot of our time. So I can't give you any opinion of the new court at this stage.
So I know you're doing an amazing amount of work with Get Up Women. If anybody's listening and they would like to get involved in any way to support you or to help you, what do you as an organization need in order to do what you are doing?
Thank you for that. I think that the easiest is we currently are registered with For Good. It's forgood.co.za. And most of our needs we put up there on a weekly basis. It's just a bit easier. So I think best bet if you're willing to assist, go check out Get Up Women on For Good and have a look and see how you can help. That would be great. Thank you.
You do amazing work. Thank you so much for what you do for the women out there. It's really commendable. I think when I look at all the episodes that we've done so far, all these women, all the men, everybody that come together and form this amazing support group, I think we can just really go from strength to strength and create a bright future for the women of South Africa. Gigi, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you very much for your invaluable contribution to a topic that really speaks to a very critical space. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for the opportunity. And thank you guys for having a show like this and spotlighting the problems that we're facing at the moment. I think it's imperative that people know what it is domestic violence is actually all about. Thank you.
So with that, Felicity, I think we're going to leave it there. It's a heavy topic. It's something that we're both very passionate about, and I hope that what we're doing here is giving all our viewers out there just a little bit of hope.
And we're going to ask you to like, subscribe and share, and remember, #Pandora Talks.
Very good night to you.